This is Histories and Mysteries. I'm Ashley.
I'm Jessica,
And I'm Rochelle.
and on this week's episode, Ashley is going to be doing a double feature of homicide.
Yeah.
Everyone's favorite.
Didn't give me much info. And Rochelle is going to be getting back to her roots and doing a ghost story
Ooh.
of the Christie Mansion.
Yep.
Excited.
Super excited. Love me some ghosts.
Me too. Also, just a heads up for the next couple weeks, it will be just Rochelle and I doing stories, but Jess will be here.
And we fired Jess.
Yeah. But she won't go away. She's still here. So for a couple weeks, it'll be Rochelle and I bringing you stories, but Jess will still be here giving us input and comments, and then she'll hop back on in a little bit with her own story. So
yeah, just a little overwhelmed with life at the moment.
Yeah.
And so just trying to find a good balance between it all.
Yeah, so once she gets back up on her feet, she will be back in her full capacity. But
Yes, I want to be able to bring you guys like my true effort, and I haven't been doing that, so I just want to be able to recharge. And I'm also like still sick from whatever food poisoning I had last week, so I'm just not feeling good
Yeah.
or 100%. So I am just trying to get back on track with that, and then I'll be back to give you some weird history stories.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah, speaking of which, Jessica called me
you're
the old one. And Rochelle, thank you for sticking up for me and just say that I'm older. Appreciate
No, you're
it.
old.
You
You're old, the granny emoji.
I'm just gonna start calling Jessica the mean one.
I'm okay with it. I'm fine with it.
Oh goodness. Okay, well, I'm gonna get going because otherwise we're gonna be here all night. Our story begins December 9th, 1995. So this goes way back when the 13-year-old of Bonnie Sanborn walked into her mother's bedroom to find blood everywhere. The bed was soaked, there was splatter all over the walls and windows, and Bonnie was nowhere to be found.
Oh no.
So immediately her daughter calls 911. And when the police arrived, they didn't find much on the scene other than the blood, but they did find several strands of dark hair matted with blood and one button that didn't seem to match any of Bonnie's clothes. They also found a blood trail. It went out. So the way her house was set up, her room had like a sliding glass door that went outside. And so they found the trail that went out the sliding glass door, through her backyard, into the garage, and where her car was also missing.
Oh no, not the car.
Car's gone too.
Oh, okay.
Police put out a missing persons report and started their search. And they started by focusing on her car because that's really all they had. It was a 1989 Chrysler New Yorker.
Oh, an old car like Ashley.
I was actually born before that. They used the media. They used the media to help get the word out, and it worked. A man called. He said that he takes a walk through the desert. This was in Tucson, and he thinks he saw a car that matched Bonnie's. So the police went out there, and sure enough, parked there in the desert was Bonnie's car, and in her back seat was Bonnie's body.
Oh no.
Her bottom half of her body was naked. She was bound and gagged and had 18 stab wounds to her head.
Oh.
Just to her head?
To her, yeah, just to her head.
Okay, like 18 stab wounds that was first brought up by you, that was rough. And then as soon as you said to her head, it was just like instant cringe.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Oh.
They also found a bunch of defensive wounds, so she definitely tried to fight off her attacker.
Good.
It was also evident that Bonnie had been sexually assaulted. But The only semen they were able to find was one small dot on her thigh, and thankfully they had enough to get a DNA profile.
Oh, good.
But this was before the National DNA Index system was established. It was 2 years before that. So there wasn't like a system that they could run it through. So it was only helpful if they had a suspect to compare it to. So who could have done this? Bonnie wasn't involved in any gang activities. She didn't do drugs. She was just your average mom. Everyone seemed to like her. She was friendly and pleasant, and there wasn't any enemies that stuck out to anyone. So this this is questionable what they did. They brought her 13-year-old daughter Candace in to question her, thinking that maybe she had something to do with it.
Even after they ruled that there was sexual assault?
Yes. So apparently before she had called 911, she had moved some things around. She had picked up her purse. She had left a bloody handprint on the pillow. And when they asked her why she moved things around, she said she was just looking for her mom. She was 13, you know?
Yeah.
So they finally straight up asked her if she killed her mom, and she obviously said no, and they ruled her out. They're like, yeah, she didn't do this.
Okay, yeah, let's just like
Traumatize
accuse
her.
her. Yeah, accuse her, traumatize her, and then she just says, I didn't do it. It's like, well, okay, moving on.
I know. So they also found out that Bonnie's oldest son, who was 16, was involved with the local gang. So they started looking there. They got a bit of a lead there. The day before she was murdered, Bonnie found her son and another gang member in his room trying to break into a few payphones that they had stolen. And at this point, Bonnie felt like she had no other choice, so she called the police on her son. Her son spent the night in juvenile detention, so he couldn't have committed the murder himself, but other gang members, who didn't spend the night in jail could have been mad that, she called the police on their gang member friends. And so the police went and interviewed all of the gang members, and there was one named Jeremy who was known to be extremely violent. He would often use crack cocaine at parties, and then he would take a knife out and just stab himself in the head.
What?
Yeah, like obviously not enough to like do brain damage, but he would like leave marks on himself. Yeah, super weird. Also, the actor that portrayed him in this, I should say this is from Unusual Suspects. But the actor that portrayed him in this was very emo looking and did not look like a gang member. He looked very emo. He had like the swooshy hair with like the swooshy bangs. I was like, I don't know what gangs were like in 95, but I really don't think they were emo.
That's so funny.
So the police called Jeremy in and started asking him questions. And they also noticed that the shirt he was wearing appeared to have similar buttons to the one found at the scene.
Oh.
Jeremy said that he didn't do it. And they're like, well, aren't you mad that like she called the police on you? And he was like, no, do you think that's the first time I've ever had the police called on me before? And I was like, okay, that's a good point.
Yeah.
But they did their due diligence. They took his shirt and his DNA and sent both off to the FBI lab, and neither the button nor the DNA match. So back to square one. Obviously, they look at her husband per usual, but her husband works full-time on the East Coast and only comes home 2 weekends each month, which that would be awful. I would hate that.
Yeah.
And the weekend Bonnie was killed wasn't one of his visiting weekends. And they looked at several flights from the East Coast to Tucson, but he wasn't on any of them. He didn't really have a motive. Bonnie did have a life insurance policy, but like they weren't hurting financially. He didn't have any secret like financial issues going on. There wasn't really anything there to make anybody think that he killed her for insurance money. So he was also cleared.
Oh, okay. This is not sounding very hopeful.
It's not for a while. So then they really didn't have any more leads, and it just went on for 9 months, just cold. Finally, a tip from another local police station points to a 40-year-old drug dealer named Lyle Winstead, who was known to be very violent. He apparently had sold drugs to a bunch of people who were connected in this case. I'm assuming the gang members. And he had made some concerning statements. Police said when they questioned him, he seemed really nervous. One thing he says while they're questioning him is maybe it wasn't a bad guy. Maybe it was just a bad trip, which seems kind of suspicious. Like he's trying to like reason out why someone would do this.
Yeah.
but the DNA didn't match either.
Ugh, no.
So, with no other suspects, they start to run the DNA against all known sex offenders in the area because they did have to put their DNA on file, and nothing came up there either. They had nothing else. So they go back to talk to the family, and they're like, can you just think of anyone, like anyone that your mom would have had contact with, anyone at all? And the family came up with like a handful of names, but some of them, like, they didn't even have a reason why they should check into them. They just like said, here's a person that she came in contact with. But they didn't have anything else. So they went and they started interviewing those people. They took DNA from those people. And one of the DNAs matched.
Yes.
It matched Frederick Royval, and people were shocked. He
Why?
was a high school student. He was a very popular student. He was an athlete. He had no record. He was really well liked. He lived across the street from the family and even came over once with his dad to help with some house repairs. And he just seemed like a genuinely nice, well-rounded kid.
Wow.
But as the police did some digging, they found out that he was actually abusing drugs and alcohol. And apparently, he was having a relationship with an older woman in the neighborhood. And police heard a rumor that he was attracted to Bonnie. So here's the issue they run into now. His DNA was a match, but that didn't necessarily mean he killed Bonnie. It is possible that they were having an affair. They had sex and then he left and someone else killed her.
Oh.
So, like, in the court of law, they didn't have a lot to really convict him with murder. So they called Freddie in to try and get a confession from him, but he denied. He kept insisting there was a mistake. He denied there was an affair at all. So they decided to up the ante. They showed him a picture of how Bonnie was found in her car. And they said, see that dot right there? That's your semen. And Freddie pushed back from the table and says, I want a lawyer. I don't want to do this anymore. You're going to arrest me, so arrest me. So police said, bet, and arrested him.
Oh my gosh.
He was charged with kidnapping, 2 counts of sexual assault, and first-degree murder. He was actually facing the death penalty for this. So he decided to make a deal with prosecutors for life in prison and agreed to never appeal. So this is kind of what investigators were able to piece together. Although they never got a confession from Freddie, this is what they think happened the night she was murdered. Freddie went over early in the morning hours with a chipping hammer and the intent to sexually assault Bonnie. The sliding glass door leading to her bedroom was unlocked, so he pushed it open and entered. Bonnie wakes up and says, "Who's there?" But Freddie jumps onto her and starts fighting back. So he hits her with the hammer, spraying blood everywhere. He keeps hitting her until she stops moving. He then ties her hands together, carries her to the car, and drives to the desert. And this line, when they said this, made me want to vomit, but they said, and then he rapes a dying woman.
Ew.
Like, can you imagine that laying there dying? No. I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know why that hit me so hard, but, and then he left her there to die where she did. And, the rest is the story. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. So unfortunately, that was the story of the murder of Bonnie. But as I said, I have a 2-for-1, so I have a whole nother story for you.
But it just it doesn't make any sense. Why would you just go with it?
What do you mean?
Take this out if I'm wrong, but he all they had was the fact that his semen was on her, and he might not have done it, right?
Yeah, so apparently they were able to have enough evidence to make him take the plea deal. And I tried to find more, but there just wasn't a lot. I tried to look into other sources than just the documentary, but it was so old, there just wasn't a lot there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I was just very confused. Why would you just roll with something if you might not have done it,
Yeah, for sure. I get that. All right, so our second story is a bit shorter, but our second story takes place on October 3rd, 1994 in Eugene, Oregon.
Oh, another
Janice,
1994.
yeah, that's the old one too. Janice Itura is asleep in her bed when she is woken by her 18-year-old son's girlfriend screaming for help from his bedroom. The girlfriend said they did something to Aaron. There was blood pooling around him, and so his mother rolled him over and saw a gash on his forehead. She immediately calls 911, and the paramedics rush to her house.
Was it the aliens?
No.
Oh. Damn it.
Upon further inspection, they realized that the gash was actually a bullet wound. He had been shot in the head.
Oh my gosh.
Paramedics rushed to the hospital, but Aaron did die 9 hours later.
It's awful.
Yeah. So detectives start investigating into this case by testing both Janice and the girlfriend for gunshot residue on their hands because they were the two in the house at the time, but they both tested negative. And they were wondering, why was the girlfriend spared? She was laying right next to him.
Yeah.
And she wasn't shot. So they thought that maybe it was an ex-boyfriend or someone who was jealous, but that didn't really seem to be the case. And my thought was immediately went to maybe it was the girlfriend, but I guess that avenue wasn't really looked into, and that's not what it ends up to be. So, but so then they thought, well, this looks more like an execution style killing. Like someone came in with the intent to shoot him in the head and leave, especially because they didn't touch the girlfriend. So it wasn't like a break-in or a surprise thing. But by whom? As they started to look into Aaron's background, they had been they found out that he had been hanging out with members of the gang 74 Hoover Crips.
Ooh.
The gang would steal property and then sell it for drug money. That was kind of like their thing. And Aaron was a big dude. He was 6'5", 250 pounds. So a lot of the kids in school were afraid of him, and he played into that tough guy persona. But surprisingly, he started to turn his life around. He became involved with an anti-gang group and tried to use his negative experiences to help other kids in the school. His mom even said that like kids would come over from the neighborhood just to like hang out with him, and he really tried to be a mentor to these kids.
Aww.
So they thought, well, maybe the gang members are mad, that he's now working in this anti-gang group, and it was, one of the gang members that did it.
It's like a gang episode?
I guess so. So investigators started to look into his gang associates and ran across a lady by the name of Mary Thompson. Any relation, Jessica?
No, because I'm also not I'm only a Thompson by marriage.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
And she was part of that same anti-gang task force that Aaron was a part of. Mary was a well-known community figure. She was on TV stations and news stations a lot for her anti-gang outreach, stuff like that. Everybody says she had a larger-than-life personality. She was very well-respected. And she not only could speak well on the news, but she also was able to understand a lot of the gang speak. And she was actually the one that got Aaron involved in this anti-gang task force because she apparently had a son, Bo, who joined a gang, and she felt like she couldn't help him, so she asked Aaron to kind of look out for him and try and mentor him and try and keep him out of this gang life. And Aaron did. He was really a great mentor to Bo and really tried his best to keep him out of trouble. And Mary even had her house kind of become a haven for kids trying to avoid gangs or kids that had just gotten out of gangs. She would also give information to the police that she would hear from the kids unbeknownst to them. So I don't know, but and she said that she thought that maybe it was someone named Sonny who had murdered Aaron. Apparently, Sonny came to her a week before Aaron was murdered and asked her where Aaron lived and asked for a picture of him. And the police were like, well, that's suspicious. Let's find this Sonny guy. But they couldn't find anyone named Sonny.
Of course not.
A bit later, there was a tip, not from Mary, that said two former gang members, kids that had hung out at Mary's house, were bragging about killing Aaron. They were Jim Elstead and Joe Brown. And then a short time after the tip came in, Mary also showed up to the police saying that those two boys came to her the night of Aaron's murder and that they had a gun they wanted her to help get rid of. So police are like, well, that's really suspicious. So they bring these two boys in for questioning. They, of course, denied it, but after hours of interrogation, they finally confess.
What?
Yeah. Joe said that he was the lookout and Jim was the killer. And police took them back to the scene and told the boys to tell them exactly what happened. And Joe just said, we came through the garage door, shot Aaron in bed, and left.
Aww.
But why? So you remember Mary?
Uh-huh.
Well, hold on. So I'm sorry.
Well, what?
Well, so 3 weeks before Aaron's murder, Bo gets into a fight and pulls out a knife and cuts a kid. So remember, Bo was Mary's son. And the police come and Aaron took the blame for the knife. He said, no, it wasn't Bo. It wasn't Bo. It was me. But aside from what he said, the police decided to arrest both him and Bo. So Bo would just go to a juvenile center, but Aaron would be taken to prison. So Aaron decided that he wasn't going to keep lying for Bo, that Bo had to stand up and take his own consequences, and he was going to testify against him. Well, Mary didn't like that. Mary was pissed and told Aaron that if he testified against her son, he'd be sorry.
What?
Mary went to the kids that lived with her and told them that Aaron was actually the one with the knife, not Bo, and that Aaron was lying to the cops, and that Bo was locked up for something he didn't do, and she'd really, really like to see Aaron dead.
Lovely.
Yes. So, but the cops were like, there's no way. This is Mary Thompson. Maybe the boys are mistaken. Maybe they mistook something she said, misinterpreted it. Like, there's no way. So, but, they had to chase this lead down and they started to look into Mary. Come to find out, she's got quite a record in other states.
Oh.
And that she was lying about most of the things she said about her life. So police decided to put a wiretap on Mary's phone. And they find out that Mary is deeply involved in the gang. She was the gang mom. Yeah.
That's a turn.
Yeah. This was
oh my goodness,
shocking to the community. And even the police, because some of them were on that same anti-gang task force with her. And they couldn't believe it. But they were listening to her phone tap and they found out that she was congratulating the kids on their crimes, asking to see what they stole. She was talking about what kind of drugs they were using and how they could get them. The police had over 2,000 calls. And boy, did she talk.
Holy crap.
Yeah, she was basically the kingpin, even threatening one kid that would get what Aaron got if he wasn't careful, were her words.
Holy crap.
But this wasn't enough to convict Mary of murder, so they needed a gang member to flip. They knew that a lot of the gang members had several federal crimes against them, so the police kind of used that to pressure them to get information on Mary. And the first to flip was a 14-year-old girl who had hung out with the gang. She confirmed that Mary told those guys to kill Aaron. She said she was there when the conversation happened and that Mary told her to call Aaron's house to see if he was home. Once they found out that Aaron was there, Mary called Jim and said, he's there, go get him. Mary then helps the boys get rid of the murder weapon. And so she was arrested. She never confesses, but once she's arrested, a ton of gang members come forward and just start ratting on her. Mary was charged and convicted of aggravated murder, first-degree burglary, and 6 counts of hindering prosecution in Aaron's case. She was sentenced to life at first, but then her sentence got reduced to 25 years. And she was up for parole in 2020. But before that, she had found a legal loophole and was released in 2019.
No.
I tried to find out like where she was now or what's happening to her now, and I couldn't find anything. But I did find that her son Bo continued in his life of crime and continued like committing a bunch of crimes and was in and out of jail, ended up committing a felony, and then he had a gun on him, so he was arrested again for that. And he ended up dying in 2017 in a car accident.
What?
Yeah. And then Jim and Joe, who were 17 and 18 at the time of the murders, were tried as adults and convicted of first-degree murder. Jim was sentenced to 16 years in prison, and Joe was sentenced to 10 years.
That's wild.
Yeah. And that is my double feature stories.
I loved it.
Ooh.
Yeah, that shocked me when it turned out it was Mary. I was like, no way.
Yeah, and that she was like a freaking mob boss.
I know. It's crazy. Okay, let's hear a ghost story.
Yeah, I'm so excited for a ghost story.
So, as someone who's made it her career to talk about ghosts and haunted places, I've come across all sorts of stories regarding spooky happenings in Canada, especially around Ontario. Although you guys know that I'm currently located in Kingston, Canada's first capital city, I did go to university in Toronto and spent 4 years living there. There's no doubt that the city has been built up into an urban metropolis with skyscrapers and modern transit everywhere you turn. Despite this, Toronto has had quite the rich history, and many of the old historic homes are still there, hidden away in between brand new buildings. From the giant Casa Loma that stands tall over the city to the smaller Mackenzie King Estate home, there are haunted houses all around. You just have to look for them. So one of the more notable haunts in Toronto is Christie Mansion.
Never heard of it.
I think you indirectly will have heard of it.
Okay.
Ooh.
Mr. Christie first arrived in Toronto in 1848. He was still a teenager back then, but he had already spent a few years as an apprentice to a baker back home in Scotland. When he arrived in Canada, he got a job working at a bakery on Yonge Street. He'd spend his nights baking bread, and in the morning, he would push a hand cart down into the nearby village of Yorkville, which has since long been swallowed up by the city, to sell his goods. Things went well. Within a few years, he owned his company. He partnered with his old boss and started winning awards for his cookies. In 1860, when he was just 30 years old, Mr. Christie already employed a staff of 5 people baking by hand. From there, the business expanded quickly. By 1874, the steam-powered Christie Brown and Company factory took up an entire city block, and the business kept on growing. The building is still there now. It's part of the George Brown College. By the time the 1800s drew to a close, Mr. Christie employed 2 out of every 3 people in the entire Canadian biscuit manufacturing industry.
Wow.
Wow.
With his fortunes from Christie Brown and Company, Mr. William M. Christie hired architects Gordon and Helliwell to design the late Victorian style home. It was built in 1881 in the posh Queen's Park neighborhood, amongst other elegant mansions. When he died of cancer in June of 1900, William Mellis Christie was one of the most famous business tycoons in Canada. He built a fortune, traveled around the world, and became a public figure in Canada, a trustee of the University of Toronto and a member of the Board of Trade. He was known as a philanthropist and even helped found the Toronto Industrial Exhibition, now known as the Canadian National Exhibition, or the CNE.
Cool.
Christie Street was named in his honor. His mansion stood in one of the highest profile spots in Toronto, across the street from the provincial legislature at Queen's Park. That's where he passed away. As he was laid to rest in Mount Pleasant Cemetery, his son Robert inherited everything: the money, the business, and the Christie Mansion. That, if you believe the rumors, is when things got weird.
Ooh.
The grisly story has been told many times. most notably in the book Haunted Toronto by John Robert Colombo. In 1910, Robert had the home reconstructed with designs by Darling and Pearson. The 3-story mansion has a red brick exterior with beautiful stonework details, porte cochere, which is a covered entrance for a vehicle to pass through, arched dormer windows, and a steep stepped gable and a tower. Inside is a spectacular spiral staircase that extends from the cellar up to the 3rd floor. It's topped with stunning oculus that lights the center of the mansion. There's a large ballroom on the main floor with ornate ceiling plasterwork, floor-to-ceiling wainscoting, an impressive fireplace, and French doors that lead to a solarium and dining room. The incredible solarium features skylights and arched windows filling the marble-floored room with light. The Grand Hall features a barrel-vaulted ceiling with oak paneling, while the library highlights include a coffered ceiling, oak cabinets, and paneling along with an impressive fireplace. They say Robert Christie had a mistress, and while he was living in the Christie mansion with his family, he decided she should live there too. He kept her hidden in a secret chamber behind the wood paneling in the library. They call it Room 29.
Oh.
It was fully furnished with a bed and a bathroom and a butler to bring her all of her meals so she would never have to leave.
I want a butler.
She would just hang out in there, waiting for him to visit so they could have sex and carry on whatever twisted semblance of a romantic life you can have when one of you is being held in the secret room of a Victorian mansion by your lunatic cookie baron lover, slowly going mad as he loses interest, and you're left alone more and more often, hour after hour after hour, until finally you can't take it anymore and you hang yourself from the rafters with a bed sheet.
Oh gosh.
Jeez.
It is thought that Robert had her body secretly removed under the cover of darkness and buried somewhere on the grounds of Queen's Park. Some claim that guilt drove him to distraction. The business suffered, he was forced to sell the mansion to the university, and soon he followed his father to the grave. He did end up dying inside the house in 1926. Nabisco bought out the company, gave it the famous slogan, "Mr. Christie, you make good cookies," and made it home to Oreos, Fudgios, and Chips Ahoy.
Oh, I love Oreos.
That, as you might imagine, is why they say the ghost of his mistress still haunts the Christie mansion. The building became home to the local chapter of the Sisters of St. Joseph's for a while, and now it's the Jesuits' Regis College. They say that if you enter room 29 all by yourself at night, the door will swing shut behind you.
Ooh.
You'll find it locked. Nothing you will do will open it. And if there's no one on the other side of the door to hear your screams, you'll be trapped all night, just like Robert Christie's mistress all those years ago.
Ooh.
But I like to say that's just how the cookie crumbles. And that is my short little story for you today.
Oh, it was so nice. I have never heard of it though.
I don't think a lot of people associate it with like the Christie cookies.
I thought it was a girl.
I like that's the way the cookie crumbles.
So I used thisiscanadiana.com, an article by Kyle Cuckoo, spacing.ca, an article by Adam Bunch, and torontojourney416.com, an article by Denise Marie. Short and sweet.
It was nice though.
Yeah.
Loved it. I do have some jokes though.
Oh, go for it.
Fabulous.
They're very racy.
Oh.
It's the first thing that popped up, so let's go with it. Okay. What did the toaster say to the slice of bread? I want you inside me.
Oh.
Okay, wait, let me do that again. Let me do it again. I gotta do it with a different voice.
Okay.
What did the toaster say to the slice of bread?
I don't know what.
What, Jess?
I want you inside me.
Oh,
Oh, I hate that voice.
Okay. the
Don't
most
like
popular?
that.
I have more. Who's the most popular guy at the nudist colony?
Dick.
The one who can the one who can carry a cup of coffee in each hand and a dozen donuts.
No.
Yeah, I love it.
Oh.
I don't want to eat those donuts though.
Oh. I have a family-friendly joke.
Okay.
It's really stupid, but I like it.
Okay, go.
What did the fish say when he swam into a wall?
Ouch.
Damn.
I should have been the beaver.
True. Well, if you want more of that risque humor, you can find us on historiesandmysteries.ca. We are also on Facebook and Instagram, Histories and Mysteries Podcast.
Yeah, and if you'd like to rate and review us, we would love to hear from you. The good, the bad, and the ugly. On Spotify, you can
But
rate
only the
us.
good. If you don't like us, just
Yeah, you can.
just don't review.
I also don't want to hear the bad and the ugly. So send those to Jess. She does apparently.
Yeah, my email is Jessica Wheeler _ You can send me all your complaints if you'd like. But in all honesty, just please rate and review us on Apple and Spotify. We would love it so much.
That'd be great.
Yep. I didn't think of anything to say.
And Rochelle and I are going to go on some ghost hunts this summer.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And if you're in the Kingston area, come on a haunted walk tour. Yeah, always plug in my job, the haunted walk.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
actually, I know you're in West Virginia, not
am.
Virginia.
Correct.
But the haunted campfire they did last night was in Ashland, Virginia,
Oh.
which is like fairly close to you. It was really cool. The stories are really cool.
Oh, that's cool.
Now I want to go there.
Well, come anytime you want, Rochelle.
Yeah, I want to go to West Virginia.
Come on over.
Okay.
Okay.
Everyone
Everyone
go to Ashland. She lives at
pinpointing
567
Ashland.
somewhere in West Virginia Lane.
West Virginia. That's my exact. All right. Well, we look forward to bringing you 2 new episodes next week. Bye.
Bye.